we've been talking about a lot of different reasons why people don't believe in God, and they have a hurdle. And what we said was, a lot of times they're not rejecting the true God, they're rejecting a distorted view of God, a false God, something that they just come up with. And we talked about different reasons. We said that we talked about an on-demand God, like we want it, Jim Morrison. We want the world and we want it now, right? I want God, this is what I want it now, and on-demand God does not exist. It doesn't work that way. We talked about feelings. Sometimes, well, I don't feel them. And again, we said, you're not going to feel God all the time. That's not who God is. He's much bigger than that, but he's there. And today I just want to talk about one of the main reasons, I think, and even religion. I mean, religion makes things complicated with all the rules and everything, and Jesus simplifies the whole thing with love. But today I think is the most significant reason why people have a hard time. And a lot of things that as you saw in the video, how can I believe in a God that doesn't seem to care? How can I believe in a God that let the Holocaust happen, you let this happen, you let that happen, and how do I believe that? Last week there was a television show that I just fell into because I was eating, and all of a sudden it was up on the screen at a local establishment. But I went home and I found it. And it was like a Facebook thing, and it was like God friended me. Did anybody see that? Very cool. I'm working all the time, so I was like, ooh, good name for a series. But as I watched the picture, it was just, he was a rabid atheist, the guy, and he had a podcast. And he had a rabbi on the show, and he was just attacking everybody. He was very proud of his stance, and on and on. So all through the thing, he's just this rabid, and he's dreaming of a bigger next step, like a contract with Sirius Radio and all this, and I'm gonna knock all these Christian stuff out. And all of a sudden, he gets a phone notification, bloop, and it was a friend request from God. So he's like, yeah, right, ding, and he deletes it right away, puts it back in his pocket. A little while later, bloop, another friend request from God. And this happened about 4 times, and I guess finally he said, all right, I'll play along. And he accepts the friend request. The profile picture was a little cloud with a blue sky behind the cloud. Next he gets, how Facebook gives you one of those suggested friend requests? We suggest you friend so-and-so. That pops up. And I forget the guy's name. Let's just say it was Tony Evans, right? We suggested friend Tony Evans, and he's like, I don't know this guy. He deletes it. Pops up again, and he's walking outside, and it pops up again. He looks at it, and then he's looking at the profile picture, and right above him is the same cloud. And he gets one of those whoa moments, And then he starts walking down the stairs, and he's walking down the street, and all of a sudden he hears a noise behind him, and it's one of those burning bush moments. There was a large garbage pail, and it burst into flames by a telephone pole, and it looked just like a burning bush when he turned around. So he's like, and then you saw some kids that were messing around and ran away from it. But at first he was like, and then he started cracking up, and he's walking down the street. And then this guy comes along and bumps into him, knocks the phone out of his hand, and it falls on the street. And the guy is very concerned. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And he picks the guy's phone. He goes, are you okay? And he's looking at him right in the eye. It's the guy that God told him the friend request, right? The Tony Evans guy. And he's our main character's like, he's kind of stunned. And he goes, yeah, I'm okay. And then the guy turns around, and his girlfriend and him are having a major blowout. And she said, look, I told you it's over. We're done. That's it. It's the grand finale. I do not want to be in a relationship with you anymore. And then the guy's like, oh. And he goes to walk across the street. Our main character's looking at the whole thing. He's still kind of stunned. And he sees him go down into the subway platform. And he figures, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And he goes after the guy. And he calls out the guy's name, but the train is coming, and it's loud. But then he sees the guy. The guy's in a daze, and he's walking towards the end of the platform. And he runs down after him, and he grabs him just as he would have walked right in front of the train. And the guy kind of snaps out of the daze he was in, and he looks at him. He goes, I think you just saved my life. It wasn't like an intentional suicide thing. And our main character was saying, well, look, I got a friend. And he goes into the story. The guy goes, look, I don't know what you're talking about. So our main character is like, this isn't an elaborate hoax? He goes, no, I truly believe you just saved my life. I didn't want to die, but you found out the guy was a doctor. He lost someone on the table that day. Then his girlfriend breaks up with him. He was just a mess. Someone else friend requests him, and all these characters start to intersect. And then we find out later, one of the girls goes to him as he was in his rabid atheist mode. They found out his father was a pastor of a church. And she said, what happened to you? And finally he caved and he goes, I grew up in the church. I was part of the choir. I was being groomed for leadership in the church. And my mom got cancer. And she ended up in the hospital. And the whole church, we were praying for her, and I was praying for her. And man, I never prayed so hard. And you know what? Miracle of miracles, she went into remission. And we were all celebrating. The entire church was celebrating. I was celebrating. My father was all, oh man, I never felt so close to God. And then on the way home, she got into a car accident, was killed. And your heart just sank, it's like, and he's like, how can I believe in a God that would let that happen? And this is what put him on his path. And for us, it might be, I don't know, you might open up your news app and just read the news. It's school shooting, mass murder here, a senseless racist shooting, or a natural disaster. Indonesia, we just had an earthquake, lost about 1,200 people or so. The Nazarene Church is on a lot of it there. But, and then people that are involved with this church that might not be here on Sundays, they've gone through some serious sexual, emotional abuse, and you kind of physical abuse, and you're wondering, why, God? Why would you let this happen? Personal for you, you never planned on being alone, but you're alone now, and you're raising your kids, and it's getting kind of tough, or you do good in the church, you're all in, you do good. And everybody else seems to be getting ahead, and you seem to be in a holding pattern. You're like, hey, God, I'm not feeling the blessings here. What's going on? You just can't seem to get it. And why, God, would you let all this stuff happen? And if you can do something, why aren't you doing anything? And how could I believe in a God that doesn't seem to care? I never felt so alone. I never felt so disconnected. Is this all fake? What is it? And again, if you ever felt that way, you're not alone. And I talked a little bit about it last week. There's a lot of people that can relate to that. David, again, man after God's own heart, and all you hear him saying is, why are people chasing me, trying to kill me? Where are you, God? Why don't you hear my prayers? You anointed me to be king, and the whole bottom's fallen out. Read the book of Job. Now, I did a teaching on the book of Job from a wisdom perspective, but that'll mess with your mind. Satan wants to attack Job, and he wipes out all his livestock. If you take that into today, that means you just destroyed the guy financially. Every bit of finances he had was ruined. He loses his house, he loses his wealth, he loses his business, and then all of a sudden he gets sick, he breaks out and boils all over. A couple of friends come to minister to him, and they turn out to be real jerks. And then his wife, he's at the lowest point, and guess what wifey does? Hey, Job, why don't you just curse God and die? How's that for needing marriage counseling at the lowest point in your life? Just curse God and die, will you? Thank you, wifey. And it's just a mess. John, when Michael was here preaching for me, John, to me, is one of the biggest mind blowers. John the Baptist, he had a reason to be here. He was preparing the way of the Lord, kind of like a best man does at a wedding. He's handling all the details for the groom. He's telling people to repent. He's baptizing people. He's getting everything ready. He's Jesus' cousin. And all of a sudden, Jesus comes, and people started following John. And he said, look, don't follow me, because I'm not even worthy to untie his sandals. And then Jesus gets on the scene, and he baptizes Jesus himself. And then what happens right after that? He gets arrested for doing the right thing. Now with Herod. And he's put in prison for doing what's right. Put yourself in John's place. I'm Jesus' cousin. I'm good. You don't know who you're messing with, man. Seriously. You're going to be in trouble for this one. And I've seen Jesus' power. I've seen the deaf hear, the blind see, the lame are leaping for joy. I've seen him raise the dead. I'm his cousin. He did tricks for people he did a parlor trick at a wedding, and he didn't even know them. He turned water into wine. What do you think's going to happen to you? And he waits, and he waits, and he waits, and nothing's going on. And all of a sudden, he sends one of his disciples, and he goes, look, go ask him, is he the one? Or should we be waiting for somebody else? In other words, what am I still doing here? Don't you care that I'm here? What's going on? Jesus had the power to rescue John, and he didn't. And John just didn't lose his job. He lost his head, right? So where is God in that? Two things I want to say. I'm not going to be able to answer all your questions in this sermon, obviously. But I promise you, I am going to point you to the one who one day will answer it all. So I'm going to give you two big thoughts. We'll unpack them, and we'll take it from there. So when God doesn't seem fair, the number one thought would be, the number one point is, God has a purpose in your pain. God has a purpose. He'll bring a purpose out of it. Not that he caused it for that, but he'll bring good out of bad. For me, I've had trouble this week because I started getting a bug from something. I don't know what's going on. But it could be anything. It could be minor, something like that. You're preparing for a meeting and you get a sore throat. Or somebody lets you down. Somebody that was close to you, all of a sudden, man, they just turn on you. They start blaming you for a bunch of stuff, and boom, and you're like, oh, what's that all about? Or they take advantage of you, or life doesn't go the way you want. I had my plan. This is the way it was supposed to be. Or something big, cancer or a death. Somebody close to you dies of a drug overdose or something, or something. I'm on my way to work, I'm late, and I get a flat tire. And I'm in church every Sunday. Come on, God, I'm going to get fired. Peter said it this way, and there was a lot of persecution going on then. It was Nero. I'm going to go in a different direction next week, but it actually excelled from there. This was the start of it. Nero, we know, as I told you, he would pour pitch on people, on the Christians. He blamed them for burning Rome down. He'd pour pitch on them, impale them on a stake, and then light them up. That's where you get the term Roman candle. And he would ride them around in his gardens and his chariots, singing as they're burning. And Peter said this to just prepare them. And he said, look, there's a wonderful joy ahead, even though you must endure many trials for a little while. A little while meaning on this side of eternity. These trials will show that your faith is genuine. It's being tested as fire tests and purifies gold. I talked last week about the burning of the dross. He goes, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold, so when your faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world. He's talking about the return of Christ there. So God doesn't always cause the pain, but God can always use it. He can always use it. I talked about Joni Eareckson Tada and Dave Dravecky. I don't know if you guys, Joni was an Olympic diver and at the height of her career, and Dave Dravecky was a pitcher. And again, at the height of his game, he pitched for San Francisco. And he got cancer. He said, everything was about my arm. When I went to school, it didn't matter how smart I was. That wasn't part of it. People would say, how's your arm? Because he was so fast. And he was just a great pitcher. He was very gifted. So it was all about the arm. The arm provided income. The arm provided the house and income for the family, everything. Everything was about his arm. He gets cancer in his pitching arm, and he's a believer. And they had to cut part of his muscle out, and they told him, the doctor said, it would be a miracle if you ever pitch again. Lo and behold, the day comes, he makes a comeback through a lot of rehabilitation, and he pitches his first game, and he does great, man. I mean, they won the first game. First game, Dave Dravecky's back on. They win again because of Dave. Second game, he wound up, he pitched, and his arm split in two. And they have a video of it, but I didn't want to do it because it's just a horrible video. And you just see him crumble on the ground. And the same with Joni. Joni was at the height, Olympic-ready diver. She has a diving accident and becomes a quadriplegic in a wheelchair. She said this, somehow, some way, God was in control. And the guy that was ministering to her said to her, look, Joni, heaven and hell participated in the exact same event when Jesus Christ died on that cross. So that's an interesting concept. Heaven and hell participated in the exact event, but for different reasons. And we know that to be true. The world's worst murder became the world's only salvation. Wow. And she went on to say, God used this injury to develop in me patience and endurance and tolerance, self-control, steadfastness, and sensitivity and love and joy. She goes, those things didn't matter much when I was on my feet, but boy, they began to matter after I began living life in a wheelchair. I began to see that this is what made me a truly peaceful person. This is what real beauty was all about.